These are always helpful, I think, to see the real scenario in which these work. Oh, what's my account? Oops. Oh, I know. God, I have too many email accounts and I can't, When did you make it to makecpa.com? Darn it. Well, I'm not going to worry about that right now. We'll do it another day. Okay, so as it relates to the process, we're still going to use the work in process account, but we're going to be using some different names as far as it relates to the documents and how we ultimately determine what's on hand. We're going to be doing it instead of jobs, equivalent units. Indicate which of the following statements is not correct. I hate these not kind of questions. I tried to eliminate those for you. Both a job order and a process cost system track the same three manufacturing cost elements: direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Is that right or not? In a job order cost system, only one work in process account is used, whereas in a process cost system, multiple work in process accounts are used. Sounds right. Manufacturing costs are accumulated the same way in a job order and in a process costing system. And manufacturing costs are assigned the same way in a job order and in a processing cost system. It's not going to be that way in process costing. They're going to be assigned a different way. So, indicate whether the following statements are true or are false. Who's got the paper here? Okay. So, who's going to be the lucky guy? Elliot. Where are you, Elliot? Elliot, what about answering number 1? A law firm is likely to use process costing for major lawsuits.
I'm going to guess false.
Why would you guess false? Did I help you with the Amy sensor?
Yes, please.
False. Who wants to take number 2? How about Bob?
True.
A manufacturer of paintballs is likely to use the same process costing. So is a paintball a paintball? For the most part, I've never played it. It'd be fun to play, but yes, true. How about Steve? Steve Piet? Do I have it right?
Yeah, false.
False. Both job order and process costing determine product cost at the end of a period of time, rather than when the product is completed. False. You are right. And last but not least, Anthony. Can you tell it's Pick on Men Day? Anthony, process costing does not keep track of manufacturing overhead. Anthony.
False.
False? Guys, hey guys, the men scored 100%. Okay, nature of process cost systems. Tyler, good old Tyler Company manufactures rollerblades and skateboard wheels. It manufactures them and it sells them to manufacturers and retail outlets. Manufacturing costs consist of 2 processes: machining and assembling. The machining department shapes, hones, and drills the raw materials, and then the assembly department assembles and packages the parts. So they're just building the wheels. Do you guys know that a wheel is not a wheel? How many of you had nice rollerblade wheels and then the junky ones? Can you tell a difference? Isn't it amazing? So in this case, they have all these manufacturing costs. They come in and get put into the work in process department, the machining of it. Then it goes over to the assembly of them, of the wheels, and moves on to finished goods. This is a little different than what we had in job costing, isn't it? Assigning manufacturing costs. Accumulating the materials, labor, and overhead is the same as in job order costing in that they go right into raw materials inventory or go into labor factory incurred, or they get debited to manufacturing overhead. So the way in which we account for direct materials, direct labor, and overhead's the same. Then assigning these manufacturing costs to the work in process in a process system is going to be different from what we did in the job order system. How do we do material costs? The process cost system requires fewer material requisition slips than in a job order cost system. They're used for processes and not specifically for a job unique here and there. Requisitions are for big numbers, and the journal entry we would use to record these, so much as materials might go directly into the machining, and so many might go directly into just the assembly. Okay? Large volumes, fewer items that are unique, they just get put right in there. So it's going to come out of raw materials, go into one of the various processes. Okay? Make sense? Factory labor, same thing. The time tickets get used in either job system or process systems, but then the labor costs are going to be put into a specific department. They're going to you're either working in machining or you're working in the assembly, right? They don't split them, they decide who's working in what area. Same with manufacturing overhead costs. We're going to determine that predetermined rate by assigning a driver, kind of like what we did in job cost systems, how we took a driver and then let's say there were more machine hours than labor hours, we would use machine hours to assign that overhead. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? So in the same respect, we're going to find some type of predetermined rate that will go into either the assembly or the machining and then credit our manufacturing overhead. So we're still using some type of predetermined rate, but it's going to go into each one of those machining departments or assembly process. Then once one department is completed with the work, it's going to get moved to another department and then to another department. So it's going to continue to go into work in process from maybe department A to department B to department C until it's finished up. Make sense, guys? Yes? In making the journal entry to assign raw material costs, you know the answer, huh? The debit is often 2 or more work in process accounts. So basically it's going to be 2 or more process accounts because for this system to complete itself, it's going to go from one event to another, okay? Who wants to read this? Can you guys, okay, how about Sam?
Blue Diamond Company manufactures Z-Bowl through 2 processes, blending and bottling. In June, raw materials used were blending 18,000 and bottling 4,000. Factory labor costs were blending 12,000, bottling 5,000. Manufacturing overhead costs were blending 6,000, bottling 2,500. The company transfers units completed at a cost of 19,000 from the blending department to the bottling department. Bottling department transfers units completed at a cost of 11,000 to finished goods. Journalize assignment of these costs to 2 processes and transfer units as appropriate.
Thank you. So let's do this. How do we determine all this? To create the journal entries to assign those those costs to those processes, recording the materials used, we're going to take that those materials that went direct into blending to work in process blending, And then those materials that were used just for bottling get put into bottling, and we're crediting raw materials. Okay? Because we're putting the materials into that specific process involved. Same with labor. That those hours assigned to blending get put into blending. Those with bottling are going to get assigned straight to bottling, and we're crediting our factory labor again. What are we going to do with overhead, though? The manufacturing overhead. We're going to assign directly to blending that allocation, directly to bottling that allocation, and we're crediting the manufacturing overhead. So instead of applying it to a job based on a specific category, we're applying them directly to that department or that process. Okay? Now, how do we transfer the units? How do we take the units out of the one process and put them into bottling? We debit our bottling, and we're crediting our work in process blending. Once the blending is done, we remove it from blending, debit it into bottling. Okay? It's all assets, it's all an inventory account, it's going through a system, a flow. And then once they're done, we're going to take it out of bottling and put it into finished goods. Okay? So here's an example. Suppose you have a work-study job in the office of your college presidents, and she asks you to compute the cost of instruction per full-time equivalent student at your college. The college's vice president for finance provides the following information. Costs, total costs, $9 million. Full-time students are 900. Part-time students are 1,000. So we got some full-time, we got some part-time. Part-time students take 60% of the classes of a full-time student. So to compute the number of full-time equivalent students, you would determine full-time students are at 900, but then if our 1,000 students are part-time, and we know it's a little more complicated than this because part-time students can take one class or they can take two classes, or three. But if we estimate that the equivalent is 60% of a full-time student, then we would take our category and show that our full-time equivalent is 1,500. Does that make sense? So cost of instruction per full-time equivalent student is going to be categorized based on coming up with a certain parameter or denominator to determine how we calculate per full-time equivalent of 6,000 per student. Make sense? Now, you can use different methods of determining an equivalent. The weighted average method is one where you consider degrees of completion of units completed, and you basically come out with some equivalent method in determining it. So this is the most commonly used. We'll go through an example. The output of Corey's company packaging department during the period consists of 10,000 units completed and transferred out, and 5,000 units in ending work in process that are only 70% complete. How are we going to calculate these equivalent units? So 10,000 units got completed, but 5,000 units are 70% complete, so we're going to calculate 3,500 there, which means our weighted average method would be 13,500 completed units. Make sense?